History is not written by the victor. It is written by the literate. In every history class, in every textbook, we see the same old adage time and time again. History is told by the victor. History is written by the people who win. However, I believe that that is not the case for many histories of indigenous peoples. And no example is more glaringly obvious than the bloody Queen of Madagascar, Ranavalona I. Welcome, friend. I'm TK, your tour guide to the past, and you are watching For the Love of History, the podcast where we talk about world history, women's history, and weird history. We have covered many an Empress baddie in the history of this podcast, but today I bring to you one of the most frustrating stories I have come across in a long time. And at the end of this episode, we will decide if Queen Ranavalona is our first evil Empress baddie. But before we dive into that, I have a teeny weeny tiny little favor to ask you. If you are watching this episode over on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. That really helps push this video out to other potential history besties. And if you are listening to the podcast over on one of your favorite listening platforms, go ahead and leave a cheeky little rating or review, because that's also a great free 99 way to support the podcast. And if you would like, you can head over to Patreon for some bonus material. It's great. We have a good time over there. It's awesome. I love it. All right. With that, it is time to grab yourself a sweet little treat, a bevy, hop in the time machine, and let's get to it. Today's episode was going to look very different. I was prepared to sit here and tell you about the horrendous deeds of one mad queen, slaughtering Christians and killing half of her population. A queen who halted the progress of her people and selfishly held on to power and barbaric traditions in the face of modernization. I was going to tell you about a queen who severed heads and stuck them on poles, who threw people from the cliffs and starved her own mother-in-law and sister-in-law. But the more I looked into the story, the more my gut was telling me something was amiss. Something was wrong, and my history degree in nosy-ass lady was telling me to dig deeper. And what I found is gonna make your blood boil. So make sure you have your emotional support animal with you. As always, I've got mine right here. Teddy, the history helper, is on the desk and on the job. Today, I'm going to tell you two histories. One that is fabricated by unreliable sources, and the other is the truth. So let us begin with the former. When you Google the name Queen Ranavalona I, titles such as History's Deadliest Queen, The Mad Queen of Madagascar, The Blood-Soaked Demon Queen will flood your screen. And AI YouTube thumbnails of a scowling woman dressed in vaguely French clothing or an amalgamation of indigenous attire will assault your eyeballs. And the story the majority of them present is as follows. A lowly, no-named girl is married off to the King of Madagascar after her father stops an assassination plot. She becomes the king's wife, but the marriage is unhappy and produces no children, with a heavy allusion to the fact that it's all her fault. Her husband finally comes to power and is the shining beacon of modernization. He fully cooperates with many altruistic Europeans who just want to come over and give the poor people an education and an entry into capitalism. The kingdom prospers until the king dies, and in an unfortunate vacuum of power due to there being no heir, the royals clamor for power, and the cunning, manipulative Ranavalona coup d'etats her way into power, killing all those who stand in her path, including her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who she starves to death. And after her seizure of power, she immediately reverses all of the policies of European cooperation and trade, and then starts killing priests and missionaries like an exterminator. Now, dear one, I want you to remember this word in particular. Immediately. She immediately did all of these terrible things, because we're going to talk about that later, okay? Just lock that in your cute little noggin, all right? After she kills the missionaries, she turns her ire to her own people. And anyone who disagrees with her is put to death via boiling, hanging, decapitation, or forced labor camps. Her control is absolute, and for 30 years she holds a policy of isolation, running her country into the ground and halting the gift of progress that the Europeans were trying to bring to the poor people of Madagascar. But after 30 years of terror and a 50% decrease in population, the Mad Queen finally dies, and progress can once again commence in the land of the baobab trees. And this is where our story would have ended if I had not stopped and listened to that feeling in my tum-tum. The incident that tipped me over the edge and sent me into a research frenzy rivaled only by a woman stalking her best friend's potential new boyfriend was the buffalo hunt incident. Apparently, in the final years of the Queen's life, she demanded that all nobles, all of them, in the whole kingdom, join her on a buffalo hunt. The final party headcount was 50,000 people. And that was just the guests. It did not include the people who were working to sustain the party that had grown into the size of a small city, nor the people who were preparing for said excursion. According to many listicle articles online, the Mad Queen demanded that a road large enough to accommodate the entire party be built so as not to inconvenience the nobles. And apart from that Caligulayan, I don't know if Caligulayan is a word, but we're making it a word today, Caligulayan demand, no other preparations were made in terms of food and accommodations for the guests, the servants, or the workers creating the road. And this led to the deaths of many nobles and even more citizens who were out there working construction on this enormous building project. And according to European accounts, the rotted bodies of workers were strewn about the road, and to add insult to injury, not a single bull was caught during this weeks-long fiasco. This seemed wild bananas crazy sandwich to me, and I needed to know where this information came from. But article after article just cited another online article or listicle, and not a single one cited a primary source or an academic research paper, journal, or article talking about the incident. Not a single one. Not a single one gave me a credible source for this rumor. And that's when I knew that I had to keep digging. And this is what I found. Deep in the JSTOR and Stanford Research Journal archives. First, the facts. Yes, Ranavalona was born sometime around 1778 to a noble but not royal family, and her family did rise to power, and she did indeed marry the heir who later became king. They didn't have children, but that was probably because Ranavalona was just one of his 12 wives, and the former king, killed off a bunch of her relatives, and just not a good situation. And also, the current king, her husband, Radama, was a heavy drinker and maybe had syphilis, which makes you really not so silly. So, you know what I mean? There were other extenuating circumstances. They also had completely opposing ideas. King Radama was all about westernization and letting missionaries run wild on the island, whereas Ranavalona held on to traditions and believed it was important to keep their sovereignty, to keep her country's sovereignty. In the end, the king did die, and this is where the story begins to degrade. When talking about history, context is incredibly important, and what most articles conveniently leave out when discussing Ranavalona's coup d'etat is the fact that the matter of succession was a clusterfuck. And that's putting it nicely. Okay, first of all, no heir had been appointed by the king. You got 12 wives, you have no heir, and you don't see that this is a problem, that you need to kind of like secure your line, dog? Okay, sure, whatever. Okay. Second of all, the potential heir was just a child at the time of the king's death, and having a child as king is not a very good thing when several European countries are trying to actively colonize your kingdom. Like, it's not good. Historically speaking, it's not good. And most convoluted of all, according to Malagasy, which is the peoples of Madagascar, customs, any child Ranavalona had would be King Ramada's, even if he was dead. If she had a child at all with anyone, spiritually and legally, they would be the heir. They would be technically King Radama's child. But it's not like, like I said, an absolute cluster. So we had this whole giant issue of who would be the next heir. And just like any monarchy that faces a power vacuum, people killed and people died in order to secure their position. Ranavalona knew that her country would quickly be taken over and she would be killed if the boy king came to power. And she did what so many European royals have done before her and took power through violent means, not only for self-preservation, but also for the preservation of her people. In the end, dozens of people did die, and I am not condoning that, but the context is important. She was not simply a power-hungry woman seeking the throne. She wanted to preserve her people, preserve her sovereignty, and also not die, which is not a crime. It's absolutely not a crime. Many a monarch before her and after did the exact same thing, but they being dudes, are called cunning and steadfast and loyal to their country. But she gets called a demon, a barbarian, a harlot for doing the same thing. And you know what? I smell double standard with a hint of misogyny. But the stench only grows, my friend. Another extremely important piece of context that is conveniently left out of this story is the speed and ruthlessness with which she dispatched the Christians from her country. If I had a word map made of all the adjectives describing Ranavalona, bloody and immediate would be the two largest words. From the way these AI videos talked, especially these AI videos, to be hot garbage. They should not be allowed to be put on the YouTube flap. Okay, I digress. Sorry. Tangent. According to these videos, you'd think that the day after her coronation, she just killed all the Christians. She became queen, then just killed all the Christians, expelled everyone, and even her own people, and stopped modernization. But that could not be farther from the truth. The timeline of the expulsion of the Christians from Madagascar is crazy sped up. The truth of the matter is that when the king died in 1828, she seized power. She was 33 years old. And for 7 years, 7 whole years, she worked with the Christian missionaries and European colonizers, allowing them to live and preach and convert and teach in English or French or whatever science and wisdom they chose. She was not anti-progress. She was not even technically anti-Christian. She was anti-colonization. She made concessions, but those cheeky little men of God were not cooperating. We have next to no resources written in the words of the Malagasy people, but we do have the words of the Queen herself, because she wrote to the English and the French. After trying to balance the push and pull of colonization and sovereignty, she wrote a letter to the colonizers. And this is what she said. To all Europeans, English or French, in recognition of the good you have done to my country, by teaching wisdom and knowledge, I express my thanks to you. I have been able to witness what you have been to Radama, my predecessor, and since my ascension, you have continued to seek the good of my subjects. Therefore, I declare to you that you may follow all of your customs. Have no fear, for I have no intention of changing your habits. But if I see some of my subjects wanting to change in the least the rules established by the 12 great kings, my ancestors, I will not consent to it. For I will not allow men to change anything that I have received from my ancestors, whose ideas I have accepted without shame and without fear. It is permissible for you to teach my people science and wisdom, but as for touching the customs of the ancestors, it is a vain work, and I will oppose it entirely. Also, as regards to religion, whether on Sunday or during the week, baptisms and meetings, I forbid my subjects to take part in them, leaving you Europeans free to do what you wish. Now, does that sound like the ravings of a mad woman? A woman bent on bloodshed and selfishly holding on to power? No, I don't think so. That sounds like a very calm, coherent, collected leader, okay? And do you know what I would give? Do you know what I would give to have the current president, as of recording, of the United States be half that coherent and calm and collected and diplomatic? Oh my God, the limit does not exist. The limit does not exist. She did not immediately banish. She did not immediately kill these missionaries. She waited and asked, very, very politely, I might add. You heard that letter. Diplomatic as shit. She said, thank you. She started out with thank you. She said, I saw what you did for my people before and now during my reign. And I thank you for that. But please, just don't mess with our culture. But they continued to push and to convert and to be sneaky ass little bitches. And that's when she put her foot down. She did kill missionaries. She did have forced labor camps. And she did bring back some extremely violent forms of punishment. And I'm not saying, once again, not saying that I condone that. What she did was obviously bad. But I need you to understand what was happening in the rest of the African continent to motivate her to make those harsh decisions. I will leave a list of books that you can read in the show notes, but I'll just say that the horrors were unending. The continent of Africa was being sliced up like a damn pizza by the European superpowers of the time, with no regard given to the long-standing borders of various kingdoms and countries. There was no regard for life. The Europeans didn't even think that the people of the various African countries were even people. They were treated lesser than animals. And when they feigned civility, treaties were broken constantly, all the time, and the hungry machine of colonialism devoured entire generations and cultures. Cultures that we may never get back. Histories that were lost, treasures destroyed and stolen, all in the name of progress and civilization, and spreading the word of a god that nobody needed. In Africa, they had their own gods. They were good. They were set. It was fine. Sorry, composed now. Anyways, Ranavalona saw what was happening, and she did not want it to happen to her people or herself, and she put a stop to it. Madagascar is an island, and it was more able to fend off colonization because of its isolation and the iron fist with which Ranavalona ruled. But even then, the French and English kept trying to pry the country open. While she was trying to modernize and grow infrastructure in her country, she was also forced to fight countless battles and use up precious resources and human lives in the effort. Many articles talked about how she ran her country into the ground, but that's simply not accurate. They don't talk about the external forces pushing down upon her, making her use those resources. She was forced into a corner by those using the thin guise of saving souls and religion to take away her sovereignty and siphon off the resources of the country. Make no mistake, these colonizers were not here to save people. They were here for strategic purposes only, to suck the resources out of Madagascar and use it as a strategic island for more trade with the rest of the world and the African continent, the rest of the resources that they were also siphoning off of the other countries in Africa. The numerous attempts of the colonization of Madagascar were never about bringing peace and infrastructure. It was coercive control, used to acquire a colony for the enrichment of whatever European nation could sink its claws into it first. For the entire 30 years of her reign, Madagascar remained a stronghold against colonization. The kingdom remained sovereign and under her rule, independent. That is a success not shared by many people who are chewed up and spit out by the monster of colonization. Was it a perfect victory? Absolutely not. Did many people die at the behest of the queen? Yeah, they did, and in some pretty fucking awful ways. But did Ranavalona do her best with what she had? Did she not try and cooperate with the aggressors for nearly a decade? Did she not, very politely I might add, in a letter tell them, hey, you can stay, thanks for helping, we want our continued cooperation, just please don't take our culture passed down for 12 generations by the great kings, my ancestors, and, squash it out. Don't stomp it out. You have yours, we'll have ours. Let's keep it apart since you can't play nice. But of course, there will be some people up in my comment section. Of course, not you. You are lovely and perfect, and don't you forget that. Some will argue that she did so in a power grab. Some will even say that it was all selfish and that the ends don't justify the means. Some will say, why are you even trying to defend her right now? She's a ruthless murderer. And to those people, I say I am defending the opportunity and the necessity to understand the full context of historical events. Ranavalona the First won. She was the victor for 30 years. 30 years! Her goal was to maintain independence for 30 years. She did exactly that. She is the victor. But history was not written by her. That is what I am defending. The right and the necessity to tell this story free from the Eurocentric, ethnocentric, and colonizer mindset bullshit that has colored this story for centuries. The Queen passed away at about the age of 79, and after she did, her son came to power. And in just 2 years, he was either murdered or exiled, we're not really sure. And the French took over. It took 2 years only. Her son reversed Ranavalola's policies and let the French in, and they went straight for the jugular, forcing the king to sign a treaty in French, a language he barely spoke, and giving away his power. This treaty included having control over the resources of the island and doing exactly what the French saw fit, and also giving them defense power, saying that if there was any perceived threat on the island, the French would be the ones to take care of it. But this brought no peace. For the next several decades, the English, French, and Germans fought over the island while the kings and queens of Madagascar scrambled for a foothold, and their pleas for independence fell on deaf ears. They had signed several treaties with these nations for support in case of an attack, and did a single one of them heed the call? No, they did not. Their pleas for independence fell on deaf colonial ears. And to put the cherry on top of this bullshit sundae, they changed history. They wrote the history books. The history of Ranavanola was told by the literate, and they hated her. We have almost no primary documents written by the Malagasy people in their native language, because it was an oral language up until about the late 1600s, but that was only used to write down religious texts for conversion. Written Malagasy was not widespread and used for like recording purposes up until almost the 1900s. The only people who were recording the histories were the missionaries and the colonizers who were coming. I have found absolutely no resources aside from the few letters dictated by the Queen that are from the perspective of the Malagasy. And if you know of any, please let me know, because I would be so happy to add that to the resources list so we can have a more whole look, a more rounded look at this story. But I digress. Even after the Malagasy language was acquired by more people, the history of the people of Madagascar was taught in French. After the French took over, they were like, okay, here's schools, but the history that we're going to teach you, the history that you are going to learn in school is not your own. You're going to learn European history, which is an extremely calculated move. They did that on purpose because the quickest way to kill a culture and assimilate a people is to cut them off from their history, to cut them off from their language. We've seen it time and time again with every single country that has suffered from colonization. Literally every single one. It's in the colonization playbook. So the stories of Queen Ranavanola I were told by the people who hated her. And the history was taught to her people by the people who hated her, who literally called her the Bloody Queen. The French historians of her time and after called her mad, and the Victorian historians called her barbaric. Peoples, listen, the way in which these 19th and 20th century historians talked about this poor woman is disgusting, and it will not be repeated on this podcast. In fact, I hope that those resources get lost forever and nobody ever finds them again, because those people. Ugh! The image of Queen Ranavalona I was wrapped in a monstrous figure, hungry for power and out for blood, a lustful and barbaric queen who had sex with a man after her husband died. Oh man, who could not accept modernity and who killed the poor, the innocent, and most importantly, Christian missionaries who were trying to save her savage soul. The bias could not be any more clear. This story is not pretty. It's not clean cut. It's nuanced and it's multifaceted. But in the end, I do believe that Ranavanola I was not a mad woman or a bloodthirsty tyrant. I do not believe that she killed half her population because the sources are too vague and biased. The reports only come from the people who hated her, who wanted her power. I believe she was a woman who saw what was happening to other African kingdoms and wanted to protect herself, protect her people and her culture. And there is no perfect way to fight the violence of colonization. And for those reasons, I believe that she belongs among the other empress baddies. And I do not believe that she was a mad, evil queen. Well, dear one, we have come to our final thought, and I have a rant. I have an anti-recommendation, okay? The only book that I could find written about Ranavalona I is a book called Female Caligula, Ranavalona, the Mad Queen of Madagascar, okay? All right. Now, the title alone makes me go, this is labeled as a nonfiction biography? Okay. Cool. Awesome. Biography is a generous word to use for what this book is. First of all, let's just get down to the facts. He doesn't know the different places of where Madagascar is. He does not know the geography of Madagascar, and he fucks it up in several places in this book. So that's strike one, okay? How can you write a biography about a person who ruled a place that you don't even know where you don't even know the geography of it, okay? First of all, okay? Second of all, he uses the phrase, "it was rumored," far too much in this book. There are there are exceedingly limited straight up facts. And a lot of "it was rumored," "this was rumored," according to legend, in a biography. A biography, my friend? Okay. Third of all, the sources that he does quote are all English or French or German, and we know how biased that shit is. Fourth of all, he paints Ranavalona as a weird, sexual deviant. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, dude? A sexual deviant? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? There's no evidence that she was this, sexual deviant, but it is a running theme throughout the entire book. And the innuendo, the kind of underlying unspoken thing is that to have, even if she did have a lot of sex, he makes it seem like it's a bad thing for a woman to have a high sex drive. God forbid a girl gets laid. God forbid. God forbid a lady likes a little sexy time. What are we doing here? And finally, this is just a thing. He doesn't give a source to any of his quotations. There's no sources. I am a footnote lover, and there were not enough footnotes in this historical nonfiction biography for my taste. So this book is a piece of shit. Don't read it. And I stand 10 toes down on that opinion. Don't read this book. Instead, you should go listen to the Queen's podcast. They have a lovely episode on this. There are a few other people who have made lovely episodes on this, and I'll put that in the show notes below. But do not buy this book. Do not give this man money, because he sucks. And am I even going to say his name? Yeah. Fuck. I'll say his name. I don't give a shit. Keith Laidler, okay? Keith Laidler, examine your shit, dog. Examine your shit. I'm not saying stop writing forever. What I am saying is that you should write another book. If you're going to write a book, you need to get this one off of the shelves, and you need to write another one. A better one. A more accurate one. Okay? Okay. That's it. Rant over. Spicy TK. Done. Man, I hope that this episode I was very spicy in this episode. I have a lot of feelings, and I hope that you enjoyed this mild, ranty version of For the Love of History podcast. I don't know if I've ever been this ranty on an episode before, but thanks for joining me. If you liked it, let me know. If you didn't, don't let me know. Because it'll hurt my feelings. But anyways, I've talked long enough. I've kept you here long enough. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being here and listening and crashing out with me. Just a mild crash out. Everybody's entitled to a crash out now and then, and this was mine. If you'd like to support any future crash outs that I have, go ahead and like, subscribe, share this video, this podcast episode with anybody who you think would enjoy a historical crash out, or who you think would like to be a history bestie. If you want, you can also join us, support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon members are the lifeblood that keeps this podcast going. Without them, I would not be able to do what I am doing. They're great. They get bonus stuff, lots of fun activities, lots of live events and bonus content and early released non-commercialified episodes. And yeah, that's what I got. This is what I got for you for this episode. Thanks so much for being here until the very end. If you've had a crash out recently, let me know what it was about. And with that, I will tell you to drink your water. I will take a little sippy sip of mine. Go outside, touch some grass, do something that makes you happy, put on a funky lipstick, do a little bit something different with your eyeliner, maybe take a different route to work, you know? That's fun. Spice it up a little bit. Have a good time. Go crazy. Get your tits out. And I will see you next week when we talk about historical hippos. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited about it. So I will see you then. Until then, I love you so much, and talk to you later. Bye-bye. Good job, me. It is hot. No. It's not good. It was not giving the things that I needed it to give. Oh no. You can blame it all on me. I was wrong, and I just can't live without you. On the struggle bus, we're struggling. We're having a hard time. It is so hot. The Japanese summer is freaking killing me right now. Death. Dying. You're gonna make it, Grandpa. Is everybody okay back there? Okay. Oh no, our water is gone. Decantered energy drink. Okay. When is that class? Okay, it's in an hour and a half. All right. Okay. Well, let's... Watery eyeball is ready to go. Okay. Oh, Spicy TK is here. She's here. Watery eye, what is happening? Watery eyeball, why do you do this to me every single time? I'm going to do something important, watery eye. You fucked my shit up so bad. Watery eye, you're fucking my shit up. Okay, get serious.